Welcome, Lee, to the Oshua web series that is hosted on Media for Growth. It's really fantastic to have you here with us. Lee, as I know that you have 25 years of experience as a brand consultant, market researcher, CMO, a startup entrepreneur, and a host of other roles. You have a deep knowledge of consumer and customer insight, branding and brand management. Prior to founding your independent brand consulting firm, which is Rafkin and Company, which is based in New York City, you were the managing director of Consumer Insights and Consumer Dynamics, if I may put it, an insight-driven brand consulting firm. Over the years, you've also worked with a number of most impressive brands: PepsiCo, Novartis, Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson, Ford Beauty, Starbucks. If I may add, you were the global director and practice leader at the branding firm Siegel and Gale, and an executive director and head of Latin American brand consulting at Future Brand. So that's quite a remarkable journey that you've had as a brand consultant, and it's most impressive. And if I'm also not mistaken, you have been associated with OAAA, which is the connect that you have at OH Industry. So today, I would like to have this conversation with you with regard to brand communications and OH. And when we talk about brand communications and OH, we just cannot lose sight of the big crisis that is staring us all, the COVID crisis. So given that we are like 4 to 5 months into this crisis, and when you look ahead, it looks like we're going to be battling this situation for quite some time to come. So Lee, are you seeing any significant changes in the way brand messaging is beginning to happen, and how it is going to pan out in the coming months and years?
Clearly, I do see a big difference in brands and brand behavior. But first, I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this video chat. It's a real pleasure to be here, talk about my favorite topic of all times, which is brands, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to your readership in India as well. My whole career, and you did describe it, and it has been quite a journey. My whole career has really been around creating and nurturing and launching brands. And when you really think about it, a brand is a promise, and brands are very emotional because they're promises. And in today's world, with everything that's going on, more than ever, brands are really needing to appeal to the emotional side of consumer behavior. Consumers make decisions based on rational as well as emotional behavioral triggers. And today, more than ever, because of the crisis that everyone is facing, the emotional side really tends to win out. So brands today who really appeal uh, the empathic side of humans, who show their consumers that they care about what they're going through, that they care about uh, their current unmet needs and their current emotional state, are really the brands that are going to win in the long term. Brands are really about a promise, as I said, and when you make a promise to a consumer, how you keep that promise in all of your touch points, whether it's a TV advertisement or whether it's a customer service experience or whether it's an out-of-home advertisement. There are lots of different touch points, and the more consistently you can show consumers that as a brand, you really care about them, what they're going through, what they're facing, what their current challenges are. You're in the long run, you're really going to win because that relationship is going to be strong. Because a brand is a promise, brands are really founded on trust. And that trust is either fortified or it's broken based on how you communicate with your loyal customers in good times and bad. And in bad times, you'll see that lots of smart brands are really starting to shift their messaging to be more empathic and to be more supportive of what the current situation is. So yes, to answer your question, brands are evolving, brands are changing, and the smart brands are recognizing that now is not the time to sell, but now is the time to really be a consumer advocate and a consumer partner.
Fantastic. So on the one side, you have the brands looking at how to connect with consumers, and that communication is definitely going to be happening through a variety of media platforms. Now, on the other side, the very consumer who should be receiving the brand communication is actually also looking at different media formats for consuming that content. Are you seeing any change in the media consumption patterns?
Well, clearly, yes, because we're all sheltering in place. Out of home has really had to shift gears. If we're talking specifically about out of home media, there's a direct correlation, of course, between traffic and impressions and effectiveness. Consumers in the United States, at least, are all sheltering in place. We're slowly starting to open up as a country, market by market, depending on what part of the country we're talking about. But in general, out of home really is all about making impressions, so what I would call reach, as opposed to frequency. So we're not getting the same kinds of viewership that out of home normally gets in the normal world, but we are making impressions because consumers are still leaving their home. They're just not out and about as often as they normally are. A lot of advertising has shifted to in-home linear television viewing because people are home more. They're watching television more. But I would say about out of home, since really this is our sweet spot we're talking about, out of home has really had to shift its role from delivering advertising messages to really, again, partnering with the consumer and informing and educating the consumer. And they're really an excellent, excellent, excellent media for reminding consumers with public service messages to stay at home, to socially distance themselves, to wear a face mask, to follow the guidance of our health experts here in this country. So out of home has really shifted from being a paid media to really being a partnership media, if you will, being a good corporate citizen, being a good social partner. And the medium is really being used quite effectively to deliver messages to customers and consumers about the state of the world and what's going on. And out of home in this country, in the United States, has had a long tradition of partnering with government agencies, with helping our FBI catch bad guys, at partnering with our with FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Group, in terms of warning people about impending storms. We also partner with government organizations around something called the Amber Alerts, which is around missing children. So out of home has a real role in the public space, if you will, communicating, educating, informing, as well as selling. And I think that because of the situation we're in, where we've got lower traffic numbers, lower impressions, it is improving, it is building, it is coming back. But in the meantime, out of home has played a really kind of essential role in that regard. And I will say that, during these past 9 weeks, I think it's been, that we've all been kind of in quarantine, out of home really has played an essential role, in the sense that it's been there for people to show, again, empathy, and that they care for viewers. So there's always a role in out of home. Viewership has changed pretty dramatically. It is coming back. I will note one other thing, that the United States government, really market by market by market, has indicated that out-of-home businesses are an essential business that can still stay open. And that's very few businesses that have been given that designation. And the reason is because they play such an important part educating and informing the public. And if you looked at all of the out-of-home inventory in the United States today, I would say that maybe a third of that inventory is being used to run public service announcements and to run partner messaging, to, again, inform the public. So we're seeing an evolution of the role right now, and hopefully we're going to get back to normal sometime soon.
Wonderful. Does it help, as a brand expert and as personal, you worked with some of the top brands, does it help that OH has also seen a higher degree of digitalization of its formats? Does that actually bring more brands toward OH advertising?
Absolutely. Out-of-home advertising has always been a big top of the funnel kind of a medium that is probably most effective at scale. So out-of-home has this amazing ability to reach people at scale, to reach people. And so it's been used in that way for many, many years, as really the number one a medium that, when combined with other medium, really ups your media plan, really enhances your reach, and really gives you an opportunity to impact and touch a lot of people out in the public space. But lately, because of digital and because of digitization and technology and programmatic and all other forms of innovation, out-of-home has also gone from being a mass reach medium to a one-to-one medium. And so because of street level digital screens, advertisers and brands have a unique opportunity to interact with consumers in bus shelters, in airports, in shopping centers, what we call place-based media. And that is not just a mass reach medium, it's also a one-to-one down the funnel medium. You can measure how it impacts a consumer's journey from advertisement to purchase. You can literally track that that journey from impression to retail transaction using amazing geolocation technology. And so out of home is evolving like all medium. Digitization, digital has really been a huge catalyst to help out of home grow as a medium from not just a mass reach medium to now it's also a one-to-one medium as well.
Are you seeing a new class of advertisers coming into OH, given that there is a wider network of digital OH assets available for advertising?
Yeah, out of home is both a local and a national medium. On the local side, it's an amazing reminder medium, and so you can create kind of a wide net around your locations and geolocate or geofence your locations to really drive traffic to your, if it's a retail destination, if it's a car dealer, a restaurant, that sort of thing. But also on a national basis, we're seeing lots and lots of new categories coming into out of home, technology really being the number one category that has really discovered out of home. In fact, consistently over the past 5 or 6 years, the number one advertisers in America in the out of home sector have been brands like Apple and Google and Facebook and Twitter, et cetera. So a lot of the tech brands have discovered out of home because we have an amazing relationship with our consumers. The other thing I would say is that we are the most trusted medium. When you look at surveys that are done longitudinally over time, you see that consumers have a lot of distrust of digital channels. A lot of the traditional channels that are still fairly healthy in India, like print, like radio, like linear over the top, like linear television, have kind of declined, but out of home has continued to grow. And I think the number one reason for that is that it works, but because it works because it's trusted. And I've seen a lot of surveys that speak to TV versus radio versus print versus out of home versus all forms of digital, social, et cetera. And consumers, particularly younger consumers, what we call millennials and Gen Z consumers, consistently state that out of home is their most trusted medium. And so, it's a medium that advertisers are really starting to discover. The smart ones have been here for a long time, and new categories are coming into out of home every day. I will note that not all categories have abandoned out of home during these times. There are a lot of categories that are very specific to the coronavirus pandemic that are still doing extremely well. So those are advertisers like healthcare, like delivery services of all kinds, food delivery, drugs, pharmacy deliveries, retail destinations that are still open during the crisis, online education, alcohol, not so ironically, and other advertising categories. I wrote a few of them down. A lot of the virtual categories, the streaming categories, the Netflixes of the world are also doing extremely well. So, it's an opportunistic medium in the sense that digital advertising and digital billboards give advertisers an opportunity to change their message instantaneously with a click of a mouse. And that has really been a big opportunity and a big boon for out of home and for advertisers to be able to change their messages on a regular basis.
Wonderful. Interactivity is coming into this medium. And just today, we had an article featured on Talon running user-generated content led campaign across 153 cities. That's quite massive. So do opportunities like these generate greater interest among brands to take the OH route?
Mm-hmm. For sure, interactivity is kind of the golden grail All you need to do is walk into Times Square in New York City, and at any one time, in any one given moment, 3 or 4 or 5 huge mega brands are running a
Right.
very interactive ad campaign where you can snap a photo of yourself and it gets displayed on a mega super, on a spectacular in Times Square. But interactivity doesn't really need to be instantaneous that way. Put my picture up on a billboard. It can also be all about establishing a long-term relationship with customers, and that really is through social media channels. So out of home is one of the biggest accelerators of social and digital, and the reason is that it's so shareable. So a consumer shoots a snap of a billboard that he or she likes, posts it, it goes viral, it creates millions of incremental extra impressions for an advertiser, unpaid, I might add, tremendous value in that way. And so because out of home is so shareable through social channels, because creativity is such an important component of that, it is a very interactive medium.
You mentioned the word creativity. Um, what is your overall observation of how, the level of creativity that you get to see in the OH space?
Depends how many years you've been in the industry. I would say that over the past 3 to 4 years, creativity has become probably the #1 brand attribute of out-of-home advertising. It is a tremendously creative palette, if you will, a blank sheet of paper to start with, and really great creative, really great out-of-home is incredibly impactful and works really well. There's a big disparity between local and national. Sometimes national advertising can be or feel more creative than local advertising because local advertising, A, is executed locally, and B, has a lot more information to communicate. Where my dental office is located, what my dental office phone number is, what my dental office web address is, maybe my opening hours. So sometimes tactical advertising, has to do a much harder job communicating its message. But in general, 7 words or less. That's the mantra in creative and great out of home creative. And out of home is becoming incredibly more creative as people really begin to realize the power, the reach, and the power that out of home has. And by the way, you do not need to have a huge global or national advertising campaign to be creative. You don't need to be McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Apple to have an incredibly creative campaign. One billboard can do it. And actually, every year the OAAA hosts the Obie Awards, which is the national award ceremony for that really elevates creativity and really rewards creativity in the industry. And oftentimes, the creative winners are brands you've never heard of, and
Hmm.
it's just based on a really great idea. So I challenge you to, well, not you personally, but I challenge the marketing world in general to compare an out-of-home opportunity with a digital banner or a digital advertising opportunity. Out-of-home is larger than life. It is incredibly impactful and immersive, and it really does give you a really great kind of blank canvas to express your brand.
Great, fantastic. I think what the sense I get is that the opportunities for actually going big with OH is quite big by itself. Uh, we have seen digital media really growing at a tremendous pace, and this is a global uh, experience. Is there a way that OH and digital media can work together?
uh, Out of home and digital are already working together. In an integrated media plan, out of home really adds so much extra juice to a digital plan. It enhances your reach. It enhances the shareability through viral that I was talking about. It drives more people than any other medium to search, to online, and to websites. So when you look at studies again and again, Nielsen has done a number of really interesting studies of out of home in the United States. And it's shown that out of home is the #1 driver of clicks, of search, and of web views and web page views. So by putting your digital address out there in the real world with out of home, it really drives people to your digital home base, if you will. So there's a lot of synergy and growing synergy between digital and out of home. That's just in the creative space. In the back of the office, the measurement and analytics and attribution space, it's a huge partnership because out of home has adopted many, if not all, of the same kinds of metrics that digital uses, so that we can all be on the same page, so that media buyers and planners can look at out of home in the same way that they look at digital, in the way that they buy digital, in the way that they plan digital, and most importantly, in the way that they measure digital and do attribution for digital to prove to marketers that out of home is a better return on investment, or at least an equal, if not better, return on investment as digital. But when it comes down to it, I'm a big believer, because I've seen the rise of digital in my own career, that digital is a channel and it is a tactic. But at the end of the day, a brand, as I said, is a promise. And how you deliver that promise, whether it's through a digital channel, through an out-of-home channel in real life, whether it's through print or radio or TV or any other medium you can think of, ultimately what it comes down to is the promise that you make. And so thinking about brands in the way that, who your customer is, and what business I'm in, and what do I stand for, and what makes me different, and why should people care? Those are the real components of a brand that are important to consumers, and how they get communicated, whether it's through digital channels or whether it's through out of home channels, or whether it's through any other way, any other touch point. Everything is a touch point now for branding, and so ultimately, digital is a channel like out of home. Sometimes I feel like we give it almost too much importance.
All right. What would you advocate as a way to build strong conversations between brand marketers and OH?
Well, we just need to communicate our story and tell our story. And we do that in a number of different ways. We have a little bit of a disadvantage in that everybody feels like they know out of home because they experience out of
Yeah,
home, and
right.
they walk outside, they take a train, they go to an airport, they use the subway, they're out there walking on the street, they see ads before a movie runs. They're in a shopping mall and they see an interesting ad that may send them to a direction that they weren't thinking of previously. So out of home is in everyone's life, and because it's about real people in real life, consumers feel like they have a very personal relationship with out of home as a medium. And I think marketers really need to do a great job of leveraging that, and we need to tell that story to marketers. It's very easy to dump your entire media budget into digital, and the reason is because it's incredibly measurable, right? And
Yeah.
so we live in a performance marketing world where marketers are being judged and being bonused and being compensated on metrics. How many page views can I drive? What's my cost of acquisition? Because digital is so measurable and the metrics are so quantifiable, it's a little bit harder to do the same thing with out of home. So the biggest thing that out of home can do to prove to brand marketers that we are a really viable medium and we should be really essential, just like digital is essential, we should be part of every single media buy, is to really make our story, our metrics, our return on investment story as compelling as digital's. And to do that, we need to all use the same metrics, tell the same story, use the same platforms, measure ourselves in the same way, buy ourselves in the same way. And when we do that, when we are truly have a level playing field, then I think that out of home has really achieved its holy grail.
Oh, wonderful. Great suggestions indeed, Lee. I just want to go back to the first point that you made when we talked about what is the way forward for brand messaging, and more particularly with regard to OH. And one of the points that you mentioned is that OH has played a key part in public messaging, in social communications in those areas. One of the aspects of OH had been of thought leadership in the space, and you have had an association with OAAA for quite a while. So Lee, share your experience of working with OAAA, and what are the high points of the thought leadership that you were associated with?
Well, OAAA, as you probably know, is the National Trade Association for the entire out-of-home industry. And I've been working with them for the past 9 years. I've rebranded them. Originally, they were called the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, and we really changed that name to Out of Home. It sounds like a small change, but really it's a big philosophical jump because we really need to define out of home as more than just outside of the home, because it's also inside of a lot of places like sports stadiums and shopping centers and train stations, et cetera. So I've really seen the breadth and the scale of out of home grow pretty dramatically over those 9 years. I've seen the players evolve and change. I've seen a lot of consolidation in the industry. In the United States, the out of home industry up until the coronavirus crisis was a very acquisitive industry. There were a lot of roll-ups and acquisitions happening because financial buyers and strategic buyers both saw out of home as an excellent place to invest their money, a great return on their investments when you buy out of home assets, but an even better return when you combine assets to create a brand. And I think that one of the biggest changes is that some of the leading companies in the out of home industry have really recognized the power of branding, both on their own for their own customers, but also in partnership with their marketing partners and their advertisers. The other thing that I've seen happen in the industry over time is that people have begun to realize that we are not just a local and a national market, but we are an international and a global market. And I think you'll see that we like to share, as OAAA likes to share best practices around the world, but we also like to hear about best practices from other markets. We are the largest by far. The industry right now is worth, in terms of revenue, about $8.5 billion. But we know that we're going to hit 10 billion really quickly. And from there, hopefully we can double that again in the next 5 years. As out of home grows, I think that technology is probably the biggest change that I've seen. So over time, the industry has adopted all sorts of new ways of measuring itself, of selling itself, and of course of delivering its message. So when I started, billboards were dominant. And now today, I would say that the digital assets, both billboards as well as screens around the country, are contributing a much more significant piece of profit to the overall industry. That's probably the biggest change. I would say that that billboards still represent the lion's share of our business, because in the United States, as you probably know, we're a huge country. We have tens of thousands of miles of highways. So we're a lot less of an urban media market than we are a highway billboard driven market, but that too is evolving. And the whole smart cities movement in terms of wiring cities with Wi-Fi and really having advertising units really fund that effort is a huge opportunity. So out of home is really touching lots of different parts of the world and is really playing a positive role. And then the other thing I would say, if you're just asking me to reminisce a little bit, is probably the reputation of out of home. You know, for the longest time, out of home was really seen as being part of the problem, not part of the solution. In the old days, the out of home industry was perceived differently. It was called litter on sticks, believe it or not, at one time. But now, because it has played a really positive role in society and it has intentionally, explicitly partnered with government agencies and communities, both at the local, state, and federal level, it's really become a good corporate citizen. It really has recognized that that it can do good. It can do well by doing good and be a good corporate citizen. And I think that because of that, its reputational equity has risen, and out of home is a much more respected medium today as well.
Lee, my final question to you. Do you think that brands can play a part in the way OH evolves?
Absolutely. If you're talking about can customers, can the advertisers play a part?
Yeah.
They absolutely can, you know, and they can do that by really placing their faith in out of home and letting out of home be part of their media plans. And so more and more brands are discovering out of home, and they're discovering that out of home is a really effective way to build a relationship with customers and with consumers. And again, it's not just about selling stuff. I think what out of home really does for marketers is give them a unique opportunity to really engage consumers at scale with incredibly creative messaging that no other medium can really deliver. And so out of home is really a great creative, but also a great strategic partner for brands. And the more brands realize that and make out of home an essential or core part of their media plans, the better I think the industry will do, and the better we all will do.
Fantastic. Great thoughts from you, Lee. we're really looking for, I look forward to many more opportunities of having these interactions with you. And thank you so much for also being a columnist with us. So I wish you the very best, Lee, and I wish the entire industry in the United States also a great future. So thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you, Rajiv.